All right, welcome back to Hear Me Out, where if you're placing bets, you want to place them on Jesse. We're just lifelong friends who love sports and love argue about them. Let us know in the comments below if we're right, wrong, or morons. We're going to start by arguing whether or not losing titles should count against a player's legacy. And we can start with you, Josh, on this one.
Okay, so in my opinion, no. Losing titles or finals or whatever you want to call it should not count against a player's legacy for a
Unless
number
you're LeBron
of
James.
reasons. What was that?
Unless you're LeBron James.
Unless you're LeBron James, apparently, and you're Skip Bayless. That's how it works. Other than that, it's shouldn't. And that's because I understand the mentality that a lot of people and players have of championship or bust. If you don't win a ring, the season was lost, yada, yada. And I think that's a good mindset to have as a player because it pushes you towards greatness. But I think it's important to realize that that mindset also is kind of asinine. It doesn't make a lot of sense in practicality. So counting finals losses against a guy just because he got to the finals and lost it makes no sense because it's so hard to reach the finals of whatever sport that you're in. A silver medal is still a medal. It's a good thing to make it to the championship of your league and lose, but you still made it there. You know, some of the best players of all time have lost a lot of championships. I mean, Jerry West, who is the NBA logo, lost 8 championships, and no one talks about that. He went to 9 and only won one of them. So, a lot of great players have lost a lot of championships, and that's not a knock because they consistently brought their team to the championship.
Who is consensus top 3 NBA players of all time? One of them's Magic Johnson, right? Lost 4 NBA championships.
Mm-hmm.
No one talks about it. The talk about, well, he's this record in the finals, he has this many losses in the Super Bowl, etc. It's just a prisoner of the moment thing. It's a thing that in 20 to 30 years, nobody remembers. Nobody remembers the titles you lost. In 20 to 30 years, nobody's going to remember that LeBron James lost, 6 NBA finals. They're going to, or 5, I don't know how many NBA finals.
6.
That's the point. I don't know. They're going to remember that he won 5, counting next year's.
Counting next year's.
And when you're actually thinking about it also, the finals is just another round of the playoffs. So if you're going to hold a finals record against LeBron James, you're saying, well, he lost 6 NBA finals. He's played 18 years. He won 4 championships. That means 14 times he didn't win the NBA championship. Kobe Bryant played 20 or 21 years,
20.
won 5 NBA championships. That means 15 times he did not win the NBA championship. He was either not even good enough to make the playoffs in the middle of the 2000s when he had a terrible team, or he was getting bounced. That Mavericks team that LeBron James lost to, that everyone says he choked, that he shouldn't have lost to the Mavericks. The Mavericks weren't that good. Kobe Bryant got swept in the first or second round. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it because it wasn't in the finals. But if you make it to the finals and lose versus getting swept in the second round, you weren't even good enough to make it to your conference finals, and you're going to count that against LeBron James, but you're not going to count that against Kobe Bryant, that he got swept in the second round by that team. It doesn't make any sense. Also, finals opponents are not equal. Michael Jordan, as great as he was, the greatest basketball player ever, at least top 2, he played in an expansion era where talent was more spread out. There were no super teams. His finals teams, if you look at their advanced stats, I know everyone's not a fan of advanced stats, but you look at the advanced stats of the finals teams, they were nowhere close to the finals teams LeBron James is playing. LeBron James is playing the Spurs dynasty. He was playing the Golden State Warriors super teams. He was playing these outstanding teams. He played the Spurs dynasty when he was 22 years old, and people are going to count that against him. Michael Jordan couldn't even make the finals until he was, 7-year vet, 8-year vet, when he finally got Scottie Pippen. I don't understand. I don't understand the logic in thinking that you can hold that against LeBron, but not against people who lose in the lower rounds.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of going back to your point you made earlier, because I think that's really one of the best arguments you can make about this whole thing, is we talked about how Kobe Bryant played 20 seasons. A lot of people, I mean, rest in peace, respect to Kobe Bryant. 20 seasons he played in the league. 13 times he didn't even make the championship. Forget about the wins and losses. That means there was 13 years he couldn't even make it there. And by the way, Kobe lost 2 finals. So, and then Michael Jordan,
including to a Detroit Pistons team that was so much worse than that Lakers team.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Jordan played 15 seasons. He missed the championship 9 times. So yes, he was 6-0 in the championship, but that just means that every other season he played, he couldn't even get there. You know,
Exactly.
that to me is a big knock. Like you said, if you're going to count losing finals against people, you should count losing in the playoffs against people. LeBron James has finished 17 seasons. He's only missed the championship 7 times. That's crazy.
Exactly.
And in all the championships that LeBron James has lost, he only lost one when his team was the favorite. Like you said,
Exactly.
lost to the Spurs when they had 4 future Hall of Fame players and 1 future Hall of Fame coach. The only one that you could really argue that LeBron choked away was against the Mavericks, because he did have that Miami Heat team, lost to a Mavericks team that I think was worse than that Heat team, and LeBron himself didn't play well. Absolutely. That was a bad finals.
Yep.
And if you want to say LeBron choked against the Mavs, go for it. I think that's completely fair. But to talk about LeBron dragging a terrible Cleveland team to the NBA championship to lose to the Steph Curry Golden State Warriors, which is maybe one of the best teams to ever play basketball together, and lose there, as LeBron James
The
himself
Steph
has
Curry
said,
KD Warriors.
yeah, the Steph Curry, KD,
KD
Klay
Warriors.
Thompson, Draymond Green Warriors. LeBron James himself has said that every time he's ever lost the NBA championship, the better team won it. And he's totally correct. And why people just
And
pretend.
that's another thing. Every time Kobe and Jordan won a championship, they were on the better team. There was Kobe Bryant never played a finals in his life where he was not the favored team. It was close in 2008. I think he was barely a favorite over the Celtics, and he lost it. The Celtics, I think, were the better team. But everyone outside of that one, he's never played in the finals where he weren't the better team. He played the New Jersey Nets, led by Jason Kidd and I think was it Shane Battier back then. It was not a good team. They won 48 games that year.
Yeah.
He played them. Then he played the Pistons, that weren't a great team. They were a good defensive team, and they got bounced in 5 games. And they were the heavy favorites and lost in 5 games. LeBron James has never been that beaten by a team that he was the heavy favorite over. And this doesn't just apply to LeBron James. You can go to football too. Joe Montana versus Tom Brady. Tom Brady's lost 3 Super Bowls. So what? What? Joe Montana won 4 because he only made it 4 times. Tom Brady's made it, 9 times now? 6 championships, and you're going to fault him? He's made more championships than any other franchise in the history of the NFL. And you're going to fault him, except I think maybe the Steelers have made the same amount as him. And you're going to fault him for losing 3 when he put his team in a position to win in 2007. The defense gave it up. 2011, the defense gave it up. 2016 against the Eagles when he put up 550 yards damn near. And you're going to hold that against his legacy just because Joe Montana only made it to 4.
Right.
Where's the logic?
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's just an easy argument. You know, it's like when you want to discredit someone and they've lost a couple championships, you can easily just say, well, they lost championships. And it's like, it's a really like lack of nuance argument to discredit a player if you want to do it easy. And that's the main reason people do it. There's no...
Yeah, it won't be
substantive
remembered
logic
in
to
10
it.
to 15, 20 years. No one's going to remember the titles you lost. They're just going to remember the ones you won.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, I agree. So we can go ahead and move on to the next topic, which is who, in y'all's opinion, is the greatest college football player of all time? And we can start with Jesse on it.
So the question should be, why is Ryan Leaf the greatest? No, I'm kidding. Let me read some stats from Ndamukong Suh's career at Nebraska, Josh.
Okay.
85 tackles, 20 and a half for a loss, 12 sacks, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. Actually, that was just 1 season. It was 1 season at Nebraska, at his junior season. After his sophomore season at Nebraska, they played in the Holiday Bowl against Clemson. Dabo Swinney was screaming at his offensive line about not being able to get their quarterback enough time. His offensive line looked him in the eyes and said, "We're not blocking him, coach. We can't." When he was a sophomore. His junior season, no player, quarterback, I don't care, has changed a team as much as Ndamukong Suh. Nebraska's 2009 defense ran a permanent dime package with no blitzing just because of how good Ndamukong Suh was. Ndamukong Suh was so dominant that he was a D lineman, and Nebraska had the best secondary in the Division I college football that year in pass efficiency rating. The best. Only because of Ndamukong Suh. There weren't future NFL players on that secondary. Prince Amukamara was on it. I get that. He was the only other player. Ndamukong Suh on that defensive unit had only one other player that was drafted within the first 5 rounds of an NFL draft, and that's Prince Amukamara. You can also compare it to, if you look at the best defenses in the last 25 years in college football, people say 2 teams thrown around a lot are both from 2009, Alabama and Nebraska from 2009. We can compare them because they both played Texas. Texas was a high-powered offense, one of the best of the decade that year, led by Colt McCoy. Nebraska played Texas with Colt McCoy, held them to 13 points when they were averaging 42. And that 13 was only scored because that last-second field goal that Texas got that they shouldn't have gotten. Time should have ran out, but they wanted Texas to be in the championship game. Texas went to the championship game. Colt McCoy got hurt on the second play. Who was it that came in? I can't even remember who came in. He was a true freshman who came in the game.
Remember.
He scored. He's the Cowboys quarterback now. Now that
Gilbert?
Dak got hurt. Yeah, Gilbert.
Yeah.
He came in the game. He scored 21 points on that Alabama defense. And he was a true freshman. He played terrible. He threw 4 interceptions. And he scored 21 points because that's how talented that Texas roster was. They scored 13 points on Nebraska. That Alabama defense had 5 future first and second round picks on it, led by Ronaldo McClain and Dante Hightower specifically. But they also had 3 other future first and second round picks on it. There were none on Nebraska. There were 2, Ndamukong Suh, Prince Amukamara. Ndamukong Suh had a greater effect on his team than anyone else, and I'm including quarterbacks in history, because his defense was so good. They had the 180 ranked offense that year, and they still won 10 games, and they still should have won the Big 12 championship, and they held teams to 9 points per game based on one player.
Well, that's a pretty convincing argument, I will give you. I mean, there's no doubt that Ndamukong Suh was a great college football player, one of the best of all time. I think that one thing that works in his favor a little bit is playing A, defensive line, and B, interior defensive line, because the physiology of men is such that, by 18, 19, your body's starting to develop. Through your young 20s, it's developing, but men's bodies don't really develop into what they'll be until their late 20s, early 30s. That's not a pattern that holds true for everyone. And Ndamukong Suh definitely physically blossomed a lot earlier than the people around him. You could just tell watching him in high school and in college. He was an absolute monster. You couldn't stop him. He was so much more physically dominant on the middle of the line than any guy trying to block him. Absolutely true. You look at his NFL career, he was a good lineman, and I think most of what deterred his career was his character and the way he played football.
He was an all-pro. We're not gonna say he wasn't an all-pro in the NFL, but we're just talking about college here.
Yeah, I'm just using that as my point of he blossomed a lot earlier than the guys he was playing up against, which is not a knock against him. You can't count that against him. I recognize that. But he was just way faster and stronger than the guys trying to block him, and he played on the inside. Most dominant pass rushers play on the outside. He played on the inside, which is a rarity, which is credit to him at the same time.
Which means he was blasting through 2 linemen every play.
Yeah, but it's a shorter path to the quarterback, shorter path to the running back. If you have the quick twitch to get up and into the center's chest before he's finished snapping the ball, you already have the advantage, and at that point it's just not missing the quarterback or running back. So he was great, but my pick for the greatest college football player of all time, and some of it is some legacy that goes into it, but that's Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker was able to, I don't have stats memorized, so I have to look at my paper, 5,259 rushing yards and 49 touchdowns in just 3 seasons. I mean, he rushed for 1,616 yards and 15 touchdowns as a true freshman. I mean, an 18-year-old kid that walked into Georgia, a phenomenal college football season as a freshman, brought his team to 2 national championships, which is very hard to do as a running back over a span of 3 years. Got to look at my notes again. He finished in the top 3 for Heisman voting every single year that he was a college football player. He only won it once, but you could argue he probably should have won it more than that. If you take the average of rushing yards and rushing touchdowns he had per season, and Herschel Walker had played a 4th season, he would be the number 1 all-time NCAA rusher, and he would be number 9 all-time in rushing touchdowns. The only reason he's not is because he only played 3 seasons and left. If you look at all the other greatest running backs of all time, they all played 4 years. So 41 records he set at Georgia. 16 of them were for NCAA, period. He was such a dominant football player for his time. And everyone knew it. Everyone was cued in on him, just like with Ndamukong Suh. But with Suh, you can throw 2-3 blockers at him. Against Herschel Walker, teams knew he was the best. You have D linemen going for him, linebackers going for him. You're bringing safeties down into the box. You're bringing on extra linebackers, 5-man fronts, everything that a defense can throw to stop one guy, and they still couldn't do it. He dominated like maybe no other offensive player ever has at running back.
See, I disagree. We've seen it before, is what I'm going to say. Barry Sanders, he only played one season. His one season was better than all three of Herschel Walker's combined. He had 2,700 yards, like 30 touchdowns, the greatest season of all time. Jonathan Taylor, who just finished his career at Nebraska, as a freshman, he rushed for more yards than Herschel Walker. He rushed for more touchdowns than Herschel Walker. He only played 3 seasons as well. He beats him in every statistical category. Plus, as a freshman, he took Wisconsin to 13-1. They were 1 win away from being in the college football playoffs. So we've seen it before. There's been Todd Gurley had better stats. There's been dominant. He was the first, maybe, truly, truly dominant running back, and he gets credit for that, absolutely, in the greatest discussion. But we've never seen a Ndamukong Suh before, ever. There's never been a D lineman that was so dominant, or a single player so dominant, that he almost single-handedly won games in football. Football is the ultimate team sport. It's the ultimate team sport. You have 11 people moving who need to move simultaneously. Each need to do their job. Each need to execute. Ndamukong Suh is the only player I've ever seen who almost single-handedly won games outside of the quarterback position. They played a game in 2009 against Iowa State where their offense turned the ball over 9 times. They only lost the game by 3 points. Just because of Ndamukong Suh. That's it. Those Georgia teams, they were great. Their defenses were really great, too. They were really great defenses. The year after Herschel Walker left, they still were the number 4 team in the final AP poll that year. Those were great teams. The Nebraska teams didn't have a lot of talent. I know they finished number 24 the year after Ndamukong Suh left. They had a good coach. Bo Pelini was a good coach. They didn't have a lot of talent. They had Pritz Mukamura on defense, was great. They had a couple other super late round draft picks that never amounted to anything, a couple unsigned draft picks. They had no offense whatsoever. Their offense was absolutely terrible. But they were a Big 12 contender for 2 out of his 3 years just because of him. He was the sole reason. We've never seen a player single-handedly affect a football game the way Ndamukong Suh did. It was insane. He caused them to have the best rush defense, the best pass defense. He cleaned up their offense's mistakes. Everything. I'm sure he had a hand in special teams somehow. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. We've never seen it before the way we have seen Herschel Walker before. Yeah, not before him, but since.
Since him, yeah, that's fair. I will say, really quickly, Jonathan Taylor did play 4 seasons at Wisconsin, not 3, and that's why he was able to surpass him in all the statistics.
But all his average seasons are better. His lowest rushing total is better than Herschel Walker's top rushing total. But 1,900 yards his freshman year.
If you take the average rushing yards per season of Herschel Walker and add it again as a 4th season, so say he had an average season, which all logic points to his last season would have been his best, but say he just had an average season for him in his last year, he would have rushed for more yards than Jonathan Taylor.
I don't know about that. We'll have to check that after the show.
No, I checked it before. That's why I said it. I did the math. I did the numbers. So you can check it, though. Everyone at home, go check my numbers. But
everyone at home, go tell him his numbers are wrong.
Yeah. So I think we've seen guys similar, not to the extent of what Ndamukong Suh was able to do, but I think we've seen guys fairly similar. A lot of people didn't know about him until he got to the combine and blew it up. But go back and watch Aaron Donald play college football, and you'll go, "Whoa, there's some awful lot of Ndamukong Suh going on here." Dontari Poe when he was at Memphis, a very similar effect. I mean, there is a lot of nose guards who have made their defense exponentially better because of how good they are.
But none to that level. None to
that level, I agree. But you made the comment of we've never seen anything like Suh since. And we have, similarly to we've seen things similar to Herschel Walker since Herschel Walker. But again, if you add a 4th year to Herschel Walker's career, I think he's more dominant than all these running backs that have come after him. So
I remember watching Ndamukong Suh back when he was in college, and And I distinctly remember how just unbelievably dominant he was and unblockable, just a force that you could not stop. You could put 3 guys on him, and he would still probably blow the play up. And
You could put all linemen on him with a running back assist, and he would still get the sack.
Right. I don't know if I would say either of them are the best college player of all time. I don't know enough. But I do specifically remember Ndamukong Suh being just explicitly dominant comparatively. Didn't get the privilege to watch Herschel Walker in college, so
Yeah.
You didn't miss anything.
That may be fair, but I'd just like to let the audience at home know that before we started recording, we had to remind Jacob which college team Ndamukong Suh played for. So do with that what you will.
that is a low
That is a
blow.
testament to how great Ndamukong Suh was because he didn't remember the team, he just remembered Sue. I'm taking it.
Yeah, Ndamukong Suh definitely is the best college athlete of all time. Herschel Walker is one of the worst arguments we've had on the show yet. So go ahead and leave in the comments how bad that one was. We definitely want to hear about it, and we'll start discussing whether or not Josh will continue with the show next week. So moving on to topic number 3, we're going to this one's a spicy one. We're going to talk about, is James Harden overrated? And I guess we'll start with Josh on this one.
Okay, so overrated is a bit of a loaded word, I think.
That's your position. That's your position. Don't run from it.
I'm going to stick with my position. Overrated, I think people equate to bad when you say a guy's overrated. Oh, so he's not good. I never said that. I said he's not as good as people say. James Harden is absolutely overrated. And here's why. Because I've had friends, family,
Disgusting.
Twitter, sports analysts. A lot of people say James Harden is the best scorer of all time. So you're putting a guy pretty high up there when you say that he's the greatest scorer of all time. A lot of great scorers. And to me, I don't think he is. And there's a few reasons for that. Starting with his career field goal percentage, 44.3%. That is a very average number for career scoring. Very, very average. I mean,
That's around average for a shooting guard, though. Look at Michael Jordan's.
Okay, so we can. I should have written the numbers down now that I think about it. But LeBron James, Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Dwayne Wade, Dirk Nowitzki. I could have gone on, but I got tired of writing names. All had notably higher field goal percentages than him. I think Michael Jordan ended up between 47 and 49%. I'd have to look again. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I think that's about where he ended up. I mean, a pretty decent clip, better than James Harden. So if you're looking at stats, and I agree with you that 44.3% is average for a shooting guard for guys like Wesley Matthews and, Wayne Ellington, and your run-of-the-mill shooting guards. But we're talking about the greatest scorer of all time here. And a lot of people point to James Harden's efficiency at the basket. Not shooting, but look at how well he gets to the rack and finishes. Well, those are more gimme buckets than shooting, so his percentage should be way higher, like LeBron James, whose career field goal percentage is over 50%, because he does most of his work at the basket. So James Harden's numbers should reflect that, but they don't. They're just lower than all the other premier players who have happened before. People will point to his step back 3, how it's unguardable, how it's so much better than everyone else in the league at the step back 3. James Harden shoots his step back 3 at 41.5%, which is good. That's good to shoot a step back 3 at 41.5%. And I think a lot of people don't know this. Even Mike D'Antonio, his coach, said that the step back 3 is a low 20% field goal percentage shot. So it's crazy that Harden's doing it. The NBA average for the step back 3 is 39.5%. So James Harden doesn't even really shoot the step back 3 that much better than the average player who shoots the step back 3. I know people who shoot step back 3s are generally better shooters. You don't see LaMarcus Aldridge pulling step back 3s. I mean, it's mostly Steph and Clay and guys like that. So if you really break down his numbers and look at what he's doing, he's a wildly inefficient basketball player. He's an ISO player. Give him the ball. Great handles. Great passing. And he scores a lot of points. But if a lot of NBA players in NBA history shot the ball as many times as Harden does, they put up unbelievable numbers. They just don't. Harden's one of the only ones who shoots the ball at the clip he does. He does remind me of Kobe Bryant in terms of volume And again, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, not to piss everybody off, inefficiency, because Kobe Bryant barely beat out James Harden for field goal percentage career-wise, and Kobe Bryant's field goal percentage is notably lower than all the other best stars of all time. So I think that, to me, really is a knock against him as the greatest scorer of all time, because he just shoots the ball so much. You look at the biggest thing that keeps him afloat is free throws, getting to the line, and I'll give him that. He's great at getting to the line. But, and I actually don't remember the numbers now, so probably shouldn't even make the point without the numbers in front of me. But there was a stat about the percentage of wins he gets in conjunction to the number of free throws he's able to shoot that game. It's not great. If he's not shooting a lot of free throws, his team usually loses, and his field goal percentages are really low. And that becomes a problem for him because it is well known in the NBA, NFL, all leagues, the further you get into playoffs, the less refs call. They let the boys play, is what they do. So all of a sudden, when James Harden's not getting all these whistles and getting to the line for free, now he's just missing shots. The teams he plays for struggles, and they lose. He's never made it there. Why? Because his style of play falls apart in the postseason when he's not getting all the calls.
So, before I begin, let me just say Jonathan Taylor only played 3 college football seasons, so everyone put in the comments how stupid Josh is. But, putting that aside, let me take your entire argument and just toss it, because field goal percentage is not the best determination of efficiency. Everyone knows that. That's the reason teams don't use it to analyze players. They use true shooting percentage. James Harden's field goal percentage is only 44 because he shoots so many threes. But that's how the game is these days. Threes are a high-risk, high-reward shot. So you have a lower percentage of them, but you make a lot more of them. They drag your field goal percentage down, though. True shooting percentage is something that weights your 2-pointers, your 3-pointers, and your free throws. James Harden, in terms of true shooting percentage, blows every player you mentioned out of the water besides Kevin Durant. LeBron James has like 1 or 2 seasons where he shot over 60%, which is considered elite to shoot over 60% true shooting percentage. Michael Jordan had like 2-3 seasons. Kobe Bryant had 2-3. James Harden's only had 2 or 3 seasons where he didn't shoot 60% from a true shooting percentage. His PER, player efficiency rating, which is an advanced stat, take it or leave it, it's extremely high. It's elite. He is an efficient player. His field goal percentage is lower because he shoots more threes than anybody else in the league, including Steph Curry. Yes, maybe he shoots too many. Maybe that's a product of the offense that he's supposed to shoot that many. You'd have to ask Mike D'Antoni. I'm not Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni doesn't seem to mind that he shoots them all, or whoever the next Houston coach is going to be, doesn't seem to mind that he shoots them all. But James Harden is such an elite scorer. It's ridiculous. He has the post moves, he has the handles, he has his step back, he has finishing, he has a mid-range that he doesn't use anymore. He hasn't used it since his first couple years in Houston because, like I said, that's the way the league's going. But he has every tool. He is a better three-point shooter than Michael Jordan was. He finishes at the rim just as well as Michael Jordan does. His mid-range isn't what Michael Jordan's is, but his handles are better than Michael Jordan's. His post moves are equal to Michael Jordan's. There's no other offensive player who has a complete game the way he does. You mentioned Steph Curry. Steph Curry, he's good at finishing at the rim. He's good at three-pointers. He really just shoots a lot of three-pointers. He doesn't take a whole lot of shots. That's the way Golden State offense is. They move the ball around. He leads them in shots, but on a league number for your number one guy, it is what it is. LeBron James is a pass-first player who gets the rim a lot. It is what it is. He's not the greatest mid-range shooter. He's not the greatest three-point shooter. He has some holes in his game. Kevin Durant is the only other player I can think of that has as few holes, and James Harden's just better. James Harden's averaging 30 points a game the last 4 years with 7 assists and 7 rebounds. It's insanity. It's insanity to call him overrated. He's one of the greatest offensive players in the history of the NBA. I get there's a knock on his defense when we're talking about is he overrated. He doesn't play a lot of defense. He plays good defense. He's just lazy. His post defense is ranked among the best bigs in the league. His post defense, it's elite because he has a strong lower body. He doesn't close out. He hangs off his man to try to get steals. He tries to guess the passing lanes. I get it. He's lazy. But let's not pretend the offense and defense are equal. When you're rating a player, it's like 80% offense, 20% defense. The goal of basketball is to score the basketball. So when you're rating a player, his offense might not be great, but so what? Neither is Steph Curry's.
Yeah, that's true. I think the defense speaks to more than just defense, and you touched on it. He's lazy. He's When he has the ball in his hand, he's one of the highest effort players in the NBA. And when he doesn't have the ball in his hand, he's one of the lowest effort NBA players. Off ball, I cannot tell you the amount of times I watch them inbound the ball to James Harden. James Harden passes it to somebody else. The other guy brings the ball up the court. The big man comes up the court. They start to set up their offense. And 8 to 10 seconds into the shot clock, you see James Harden finally walking onto the frame. He has no intention of playing that possession, and it doesn't matter. He doesn't have the ball, so he just doesn't care. That's not elite basketball. I don't have the ball, so now I don't care what's happening defensively, offensively. He's a great shooter. He's great at cutting to the basket. He could be one of the best off-ball guards in the entire league if he would just do it. He just chooses not to. I get it. That playing basketball is tiring, and playing on-ball offense the way he does is tiring. So maybe sit out more and put more into your game when you're out there. But just taking every single playoff when you don't have the ball, to me, is not elite basketball.
But you're assuming, my thing with that is you're assuming that him being, as you call it, lazy off ball, I think he's elite off ball. He just, like you said, maybe he doesn't do as much as he should. But you're coming from the standpoint that him being lazy off ball is hurting his team. It's not. Him standing over there, taking forever to get down the court and being at the top of the key, that's gravity. His being on the court, he's getting plays off. But if you put him on the bench, his gravity goes away. The offenses struggle without James Harden. You look at James Harden-led teams with him off the court, they struggle. You put him on the court, let him take plays off by resting and standing there, his gravity is helping the team. He's pulling two. He has one guy guarding him. He has two guys with their corner of their eye on him. Every time. That gravity is helping. It doesn't matter if he's taking forever. Maybe he's slouching. Maybe, so what? His defense, his laziness on defense can hurt them sometimes. He's lazy to close out. He's slow to close out. He hangs off his man to try to play passing lanes. It hurts them. I get it. He gets backdoor cut more than any player I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's insanity how often he gets backdoor cut.
Absolutely.
But on offense, his gravity's doing the work for him. He doesn't need to be running around because he's helping him without it.
I'll give you that. The gravity that he has. I think he doesn't carry as much gravity because teams know he's not doing anything when he doesn't have the ball. I mean, I know they can't just forget he's there. I mean, it's not like you leave James Harden wide open in the corner because he doesn't have the ball. I mean, they still have to play him like he's a basketball player. But teams are not really worried about James Harden when he doesn't have the ball. They still have to pay attention. But when the backup shooting guard goes into the game, you can't leave him standing wide open in the corner either. I mean, competent basketball players can shoot the ball wide open just like James Harden could. So you can't just leave him open. But he does not carry anywhere near the same gravity as when he's actually playing. And if he would play off-ball offense the same way he plays on-ball offense, his team would score points at such a higher clip than they do. I mean, he could score 90 of his team's points if he would try to. He doesn't. And so it's not a lack of talent for me because he is an unbelievably talented basketball player. But the effort is a big knock for me, off-ball offense and defensively, and his willingness to keep shooting the ball, knowing he's hurting his team, and he doesn't stop. He doesn't have that filter or that trigger in his mind of, wow, I'm 1 for 7 from 3 and our team is losing. Maybe I should stop pulling. No, he will keep shooting till he's 1 for 20. He doesn't care. He will just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot his teams out of games. Sometimes it wins them games, but I think it's important to know when you're losing your team a game as well. And he doesn't.
But he's also, in all his years at Houston, he's never really had that number 2 guy. Besides, he had those 2 years with Chris Paul. They should have won the title one of those years. Chris Paul pulled his hamstring when they were up 3-2 against Golden State, coming down the final stretch of Game 6. Yeah. They should have won the title that year, Chris Paul. But other than Chris Paul, he hasn't really had a great wingman that he can rely on to take those shots that he's not taking. It was the couple years there in Houston when he was the MVP candidate, averaging triple doubles damn near. There was no one else on that team that was worth like any gravity whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I mean, you put him with Chris Paul, they should have won the title. I get it, they didn't. He got rid of him. This last year with Russell Westbrook is a terrible teammate. He's just, now I'm not saying off the court, I don't know him. He could be a super great guy. I'm sure he is a super great guy. I mean, on the court, he's a bad teammate. He takes low percentage shots. He's inefficient. If you want
he is the definition of inefficiency.
Hello.
Mm-hmm. Dang. That sucks.
Spaghetti-O. Sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the arguments. Make your last few points. We can start with Jesse.
My argument was so fire, it melted my computer down, and we had to cut it for a second.
Yeah, that's
I was in the middle of saying Russell Westbrook's not a great teammate. He's not a great Robin. James Harden hasn't had that great Robin outside of Chris Paul. Whatever reason they didn't get along, it didn't work. He's just an elite all-around, full package, offensive player. I mean, that's it. That's it.
I agree. He's a full package player. I think him and Chris Paul don't get along because Chris Paul likes the ball. James Harden likes the ball. Any player who needs a basketball in their hand can't play with James Harden. It just doesn't work. I think he's a talented player who is willing to pull every shot his team takes, win or lose. Clearly, it's not hyper successful. A lot of teams don't want to play with them. And back to the true shooting percentage thing that you talked about. James Harden's career shooting percentage, true shooting percentage, is just a hair under 61. LeBron James is just at about 59% for the career. Doesn't blow him out of the water. I think you could argue that probably the all-time best player, period, of all time.
Okay, thank you. So you're comparing him to the all-time best player. Just saying.
That's fine. Just saying. Doesn't blow people out of the water. But, yeah. That's
doesn't blow out the all-time best player out of the water.
If you're just looking at scoring alone, correct. But I think as an all-time package, I think James Harden is a mostly overrated player.
I think when you throw the word overrated into a topic, who's overrating James Harden? I've never heard anyone argue James Harden is the best player of all time. I've never heard anyone argue James Harden is even like the best player in the league actively. People understand, almost everyone collectively agrees that James Harden is probably the best offensive weapon in the league, one of the best shooting point guard kind of go-betweens in the league. Who's overrating him? Who is elevating his legacy or his status beyond what he is? I don't think that exists. I 100% think James Harden is absolutely one of the best, if not the best offensive player in the league right now. And where the consensus lies on James Harden is where he belongs 100%.
That's fair. That's fair.
I told you guys. Yeah, we made a couple under the table deals on that one. I told you guys when we started, if you were gonna place bets, Jesse was the guy to place it on this time. But no, thank you guys for watching. I think this will wrap it up. Go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know if you want us to argue anything specific. If you have any ideas, leave in the comments, and we'll be happy to do it.
We'll see you guys.